Hello, everybody. This is Eric and John with me. This is Sales Chats time. Welcome.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. And we're delighted today to have Vidar with us.
Yes, Vidar Brekke joins us from Metal, where he is the CEO of the company and also, I should add, their head salesperson. So we've got a dualistic role that we will dive into in today's discussion. But what Metal is a microblogging service for busy professionals. Vidar, can you tell us a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm a big fan of you guys, so I feel very honored here. So yeah, Metal, the whole thing that started Metal was the fact that most people just don't have the time to build credibility around their persona as a professional. And as you know, with sales, if you don't have credibility, nobody's going to really want to spend time with you. And especially for salespeople, just not having content and a voice of your own puts you kind of a disadvantage because there's a lot of other people who come to a prospect through a more consultative selling approach. And we always believe that before you do consultative selling, you do consultative content creation, and that's what Metal was designed to do.
Excellent. Well, we're Metal users here at Pipeliner CRM, so we've used the product, love the product, recommend the product. So this will be a fun thing to get into.
Yeah. So let's dive into our first question. So around the concept of thought leadership, where does that come from? What's your definition of thought leadership, and then why is knowledge sharing so critically important to it?
Well, I think that knowledge is power, like it always has been, right? However, it used to be that knowledge was most powerful when you were the only one who had it. Today, it's the opposite. Knowledge is more powerful when you share it. And that is what I think thought leadership is all about. And also think about it this way. Sharing knowledge is rather disruptive. Just consider what happens when knowledge is shared. Open source software brought down tech giants and powered an entire new economy to thrive because of it, right? Same thing happening in education. We'll find MIT professors, Stanford professors who say, why should I only limit my wisdom to people who show up in class can afford it? So as knowledge is being shared, it's disrupting, but it's also creating a lot more power within those networks who now have access to this knowledge. And this is what I think thought leadership is really about, making knowledge available, because it only reflects well on the messenger.
It's really interesting, too. We hear these stats that talk about the data overload and how data is piling up, and in the last 2 years there's more information that's been created than the previous history of time before it. But I think it's probably important for this discussion to really hone in on the difference between data and knowledge. Don't you think, Vidar?
Absolutely. We don't have a data problem. We have a knowledge problem. And especially with as much content that's out there today, people are looking for somebody to make sense of it for them. And I think this is an amazing opportunity for salespeople to say, hey, buyer, I understand that the world is complex and you have a job to do. Let me try and make sense of the world around you and bring you what you need to know when you need to know it, because I am focused on helping companies like yours. So that's where all this data becomes information that people can act on, and that's how a salesperson becomes useful in this knowledge economy that there's too much info but too few sense makers.
So in essence then, what you're saying is a salesperson can really take all of this data and kind of contextualize it for specific buyers, and by doing so then they can become a really valuable asset to those buyers.
Absolutely. I think that a buyer today, particularly of high-ticket items, B2B services, they are looking for somebody who understands the complexity of their business. And if they don't know you, they're not going to pick up the phone. If they don't believe that it's worth their time, that they will learn something from you, they're not going to want to talk to you. So a salesperson needs to prove their worth before they can get a chance to meet with the decision maker. And I think sharing knowledge and putting that into context is the best way to win that credibility or earn that credibility with the prospect.
So, Vidar, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you actually do that, you know, in your role today, kind of as the chief salesperson at Metal, you know, not only spreading the gospel and being kind of the brand champion of your firm, which is kind of every startup founder's MO these days, but, you know, when you're actually in the sales cycle, your own sales process, kind of walk us through how you create kind of that knowledge is power environment.
Well, I think it's a pretty unique place to be when you're in a startup, because by definition you have to do something new and disruptive. Because if you don't really have the resources to compete with an existing business model or big competitors. So all you got really is the ability to convince somebody else that you're skating to where the puck is going to be, and that takes a lot of convincing. And the only way to do that is to start building credibility around your argument, your reason for being in business. And you know, this is what founders need to do. And in any startup, it's not just the founder. Everybody has to kind of believe in that mission. So it's important to understand that the sales role has changed from being a title to being something that everybody's responsible for. And not only in a startup, you see that in larger organizations, the role of sales is much wider than, you know, the people that make commission. They need help from the entire organization, and the entire organization needs to be tuned into the fact that we are here to share knowledge, to build credibility, to make our customers and prospect look at us as the place to go, because everybody in this organization is tuned into their customers' needs. So in my organization, I'm a salesperson by default, not by choice, because everybody needs to do sales and everybody needs to build credibility.
So we always like to offer practical advice during these sessions. So what are some of the pitfalls that a salesperson or an organization can avoid when they start to try and establish themselves as thought leaders and knowledge sharers? What are some of the pitfalls?
Especially if they're a default salesperson, right?
Yeah, precisely.
Like you're saying.
So what are some of the pitfalls to avoid?
Well, I think that I've always been successful because I haven't tried to sell anybody. I have just been incredibly passionate about what I'm doing, incredibly passionate about solving the client's problems. And I've been in many meetings when the client has basically said, well, you know, I see you hesitating about pricing because I'm not a trained salesperson. I don't have that down. But they look at me and they say, well, I trust you because you're genuine, you're authentic. So I win the business. I don't know if that could scale, but I think that being genuine and authentic is much more valuable than what you might consider as you know, traditional smarmy salesperson tactics, and certainly will let you build a relationship that can go far beyond that client and the job they're in.
So that even seems to cross over into, you know, if you're going to build a persona online and if you're going to build a digital presence online, it needs to be authentic and genuine and not kind of manufactured, right?
Yeah, and this is the tough part, because being genuine and really empathetic with your customers takes a lot of work, because you actually need to understand the customer, you need to understand your product, you need to understand how you fit into the whole ecosystem of what the client is trying to achieve. Now, for a lot of salespeople, especially starting out, this is tough because you just don't have enough knowledge. But I find that you know, one of my clients did this. He started creating content and sharing content as a part of his own learning exercise in figuring out what this industry was about. And because he was publishing everything that he learned and his perspectives on it, he actually was able to very quickly establish himself as somebody who kind of understood what was going on in the market, just because he took his whole thought process and made it public. So I think that there are a lot of ways to go about this, but you can't be authentic if you're not willing to put yourself into it, if you're not willing to have your own voice. And it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes research.
Well, it's interesting. It almost sounds like the example that you're describing is really what we've talked about here a number of times, and that is, co-creating a sale or collaborating with the people that, where buyers and sellers meet on a level playing field is really the best analogy that we can use to talk about that. And that actually leads into kind of our second question, if you will, where knowledge sharing is an effective business strategy, but why are businesses and specifically salespeople so reluctant?
Specifically salespeople
to do so.
I like to say kind of don't take this the wrong way, but salespeople are coin operated. They have quarterly goals they need to make or meet, and knowledge sharing isn't something you can turn on to make your sales quota. And it's very hard to find time to do it then, because you're always trying to chase a sale instead of thinking long term. And so I think that's the primary reason. Everybody's looking for a quick fix, and there just isn't one anymore, if there ever was. And secondly, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I think I touched upon this. Many salespeople that I have met do not really understand their product or their customer or the market. And knowledge sharing is pretty much dead on arrival in that case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and this is something we've talked about a lot over the last while, is the role of sales has evolved where now you need to have business acumen, you need to understand the business of business, you need to understand the business of your buyer, and you just need to do a lot more homework in order to do what you're talking about. And a lot of salespeople have been raised up on just having a superficial knowledge of a customer or prospect, and also about this idea of bartering information. Like, I'll give you a little information, Vidar, but you got to give me something back.
No, I think we are in the giving economy, right? You have to give first and then continue giving, because the more you give, the more people are going to look at you as a resource, because a lot of people are confused when you might even take your best advice and just give it away for free. Well, the thing is, like, the people that can take advantage of free advice or free services are probably not going to pay you for them anyway. So all you're doing is building your brand as somebody who has the services or the knowledge that's needed, and that can spread. Others that really would love to take your free advice or services, they realize that, well, they need to scale this. Just because it's free doesn't mean they can act on it. They need you, and they need your team to do it. And the fact that you have demonstrated that you can do it is great. Now they hire you to implement it, because frankly, your free advice or free service doesn't help me unless I got somebody helping me execute. So, that's basically kind of where I come from in that respect.
So what is your suggestion then to get kind of away from the coin-operated mentality and into a more long-term view? I mean, it's not going to be poof, snap your fingers, you're automatically going to change. And actually, this is one of the reasons this chat exists in the first place. We started Sales Chats because we believe that there's a dearth of information and a dearth of suggestions and ideas and
practical
fresh insights onto how to change the course you're on if you happen to agree with what we're saying here. So give us some tips, if you will, to get started today with that more long-term view on knowledge sharing.
Yeah, I think that you need to just decide that you are going to learn more about your customers' needs and business than they do. Because if not, why would they ever want to talk to you? If you know less than them, you're wasting their time. If you know more than them, it's in their interest to talk to you. So be an expert, first of all. Then figure out what is the right kind of channel for me to express my knowledge and reach out. For some people, it's Twitter. Others, it's LinkedIn. For others, it is the phone. The tool doesn't matter. You need to figure out that my audience is over here. My audience are going to listen to communications or be receptive to ideas that come through this channel. And you need to figure out how do you now make the bridge between your knowledge and the stakeholders that could benefit from that knowledge. And that's going to differ based on your industry. But it all starts with actually knowing your stuff.
Well, you raise a really interesting point, and it's one that we've talked about a lot as well in the past, is how well do people really know their customers today? Because, as you say, you can say knowledge sharing, and somebody will go, okay, well, I'm just going to start tweeting. But if your customers don't receive information that way, it's a waste of time, right? So one of the tips, would you say, is really get to know where your customer is, how they like to receive information, and focus there first?
Absolutely, because it's kind of one of those things, you know, if the tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it happen, right? So you have to know where your audience is, and it might be that some of the people you want to reach are never online. They don't have the time, or they, you know, for whatever reason, this is not the medium for them. Now, you might find that the way to get to them is through, you know, one of their left-hand men or women. So those are the people that you need to engage with. You know, a good salesperson figures out who the stakeholders are, who the gatekeepers are, and also learn how to make them look good by working with you. So I know a lot of people that I can't get to, but I have a good relationship with people who are trusted by them, right? So again, it goes back to doing your homework and figuring out the right channel for, you know, expressing your know-how and knowledge, and you know, that's really going to differ based on your industry.
So tell us a little bit about your process of going through and determining, you know, even just break it down on like a case study level, where you're looking at metal and breaking into some of the stakeholders, you know, which are organizations that are oftentimes very large. You know, Pipeline is probably an exception in your customer base, you know, from like our current size. We'll be large at some point, but
big ideas.
Yeah, that's right. But we're not IBM yet. But at any rate, kind of walk us through some of that process and as it looks for you in a very personal experience today.
Yeah, and you know, as a startup, you always make your first sales to people who already trust you, people who know that, you know, your ideas are generally good, and that you're not going to let them down, you're not going to let their boss down, and if you make a mistake, they know you're going to fix it, right? And it really comes back to, like, you've been able to build credibility throughout your career, which allows you to go to somebody and ask them to take a chance on you. So a lot of our initial sales were basically based on the fact that people knew me from previous ventures and work, and knew that I wasn't going to disappoint. So that's, you know, one way of getting started. You know, go to the people that already know that you're worth their time. Then align yourself with others who can help amplify your message, and this is where social comes in. There are so many people that are online that are thrilled to be of assistance, because especially people who work in startups, because they realize that if we're not helping each other out, nobody will. So build alliances there. The other thing is find people who you can help succeed with something that they're working on. And for example, we're starting a blog now, a thought leadership blog, because we don't have a company that's big enough to produce all the content we need. But we invite other people whose voice we think deserves a platform, and we bring them on there because together we're all talking about the same thing. And it's one of these things where, you know, the tide lifts all boats. So find other people who are sympathetic to your cause, to your business, and find ways to collaborate with them without expecting that there's going to be a quick return. Just know that you're building relationships, you're adding more voices that are going to support your cause, And I've seen just recently that once you do this, they are going to start trusting you as well and be like, you know what, you should be talking to X, Y, and Z. And you know, of course, my goal was to earn that trust, but I never asked for that referral or that business until I knew that they trusted me. It takes time, but make friends by being authentic and real, and figure out how you can help others before you ask them to help you.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And what that requires is that you're confident in yourself, in your product, in your business, because obviously you can't be authentic and genuine, and you can't be that kind of collaborative and giving unless you have that confidence yourself, right?
Absolutely. And this is where I think a lot of salespeople fail, is that if they don't believe in the product themselves, it's going to be very hard for them to convince somebody else to care for it. So, you know, I think salespeople should first start with a passion for the problem that's being solved. And then, you know, not just think, like, you know, a sales job is anything. I can sell, you know, dishwashers yesterday and tomorrow I'm working for Oracle.
Interesting random associations there.
But if there is a fantastic takeaway from this session today, is if you're not passionate about what you're selling, you should really go sell something else. Go find something you're passionate about.
Yeah, and even more, people who are passionate become salespeople without knowing it. And the best thing an organization can do is try and nurture those people who didn't start off in sales but has a great potential because of their persona, their passion, and their willingness to solve customer problems. They will be the best salespeople going forward. And you know, they may not have the sales training, but that's your job. You know, polish that diamond.
And so, you know, that kind of leads us to our third question, and we've been talking about this really throughout today's chat, and that's, what's the best way to share knowledge for business success? Mm-hmm. You know, where we can even talk about, you know, instituting a habit or starting a program, if you will, again with that long-term mindset for success. But why don't you kind of paint a picture of those best practices as you go?
I think it comes down to making the entire organization aware of the mission of the company, the challenges that clients are facing that they're solving, because what's been proven is that, you know, sales and marketing people, they are rarely as effective at selling as people who are not in sales. And I'll give you an example of that. At IBM, they found that whenever they had employees, you know, particularly subject matter experts, just participating on social media, answering a question on LinkedIn or Quora, or tweeting something, or God forbid, even writing a blog post, right? It generated new business for IBM 700% more effectively than traditional sales and marketing. Simply because, one, there's a lot more people who work at IBM who are not in sales than are in sales, so they have a big footprint. But customers were really drawn to people who were just passionate about the product, about the business, and I think that salespeople can do that as well. But as an organization, you need to become a learning organization. You need to become an organization where information flows through the organization so that everybody can benefit from what salespeople are learning in the market, what the product experts are learning from building the product. And, you know, there's so many great collaborative technologies today that this is really just a cultural challenge more than technological. So making the entire organization customer focused is really what it boils down to, because today with social media, everybody is a brand ambassador and everybody's supporting sales. So sales is no longer a sales department challenge. It is a company challenge and a cultural one.
Yeah, I love it. The nuggets keep coming. So what you're saying is, like, set your organization free. I mean, you've got all of these people in your organization who, if you set them free, guide them, let them get out there, get on social media, share their passion for your product or service, then everybody is really driving sales forward and building your brand, right?
Absolutely. And Who doesn't want to do business with a company where everybody are just passionate about what they're doing and are passionate about helping clients, you know, as opposed to somebody who has a pretty website and some PDFs you can download with the products, and then you're like absolutely no personality. You don't know who's there, why you should trust them, and you can't relate to them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm also hearing, you know, Vidar really talking about is giving license to sales to not only begin to join the conversation or start the conversation around, you know, kind of their areas of expertise, but also marshal and pull in resources from across their company to do likewise, you know, so that the conversation gets elevated and amplified in a way that is attracting, you know, your target buyer, your target personas, and getting that kind of message out there and credentialing the entire company as you go. Is that a fair assessment of what, you know, that we're talking about?
And one thing that I've seen in that respect is that most companies get it and then they execute completely in a brain-dead way on that insight. And you might see a lot of companies that now are thinking about their employees as purely a mechanism for pushing more content out rather than as an opportunity for them to showcase their expertise and why they are uniquely fitted to be in the organization and solve the client's problems. Because technology has allowed a lot of automation that is not good, in my opinion. I went online yesterday and I just looked up a hashtag for something that I was curious about because I saw a lot of tweets coming in about it. Then I realized there's about 100 people who work for this big organization that are sharing the exact same thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, you all have the same opinion right at this moment. And me, it was like, okay, well, that's not very credible. I liked the first one I saw until I saw all the others saying the same thing. And I really think that organizations are better off thinking about employees as advocates by saying our job as an organization is to highlight our employees and their insights rather than using our employees to push out canned marketing content.
Wait, you mean more isn't better? More.
Yeah, or repeating the same thing over and over. Hey, I liked on our Twitter feed, Bruno made a great comment about true knowledge is basically open source, and you mentioned open source earlier, and I just think that's a great analogy to take away from today about how, information and knowledge sharing, you should think in an open source mindset. Is that right?
Absolutely. I believe in being open, and I think in today's economy, being transparent and realizing that the knowledge you have won't be locked up. Somebody will find that knowledge somewhere else, and if you're not going to be the conduit, then it's your loss.
Absolutely. Well, this is, again, the half hour has flown by, and we always love to end sales chats on a high note, and that high note is really around getting to peak performance, where we take a step into the minds of our experts, in this case you, Vidar, and talk about one of your daily secrets to getting into the right mindset for success.
I think as a startup founder, it's one of those things where success is binary. Either you have an exit, you get sold or acquired, or you die. So every morning you wake up, you don't know necessarily how you're doing, and every day you're an idiot until you're a genius. So the smartest thing to do is always convince yourself that you are a genius, and I think whether it's proven wrong 2 or 3 or 4 times, you need to keep going, because being a startup is a mission. Being a salesperson is a mission. And if you don't believe in yourself and in that mission, you will fail.
Yeah.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going every day, right?
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate all the nuggets that you've delivered here.
And you've delivered a lot.
Well, that's why we do this, right? So thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a real pleasure. Once again, thanks everybody for checking out Sales Chats.
Yeah, and another 30 minutes is just poof, gone.
Bye-bye. See you, folks.